Right. Thank you everyone for joining us for this innovation workshop part of the Genesis 2021 conference, focusing this morning on Hong Kong Biomedical Cluster and leading IPO center in Asia. I'm delighted to have a really good representation of the strength of Hong Kong in terms of biomedical research, but also a finance hub. And that wouldn't be possible to have such a great presenters and panels without the help of Invest Hong Kong and our dear friend Gregory Roll, who organized all of that for you today. So have lots of insights. You'll have opportunity to ask questions as well, which you can do by dropping them in the chat box and we can pick up on. Also, if you have any further questions following that presentation and workshop, feel free to get in touch with Gregory and his team, and they will be happy to connect you or give you further information about potential collaboration in Hong Kong. As you probably heard when you joined in, this workshop is also recorded, so you can get back to it when you further detail or also share with colleagues or whether you think would be interested in the topic. So from now, I'm going to leave it to Gregory, who will be your chair today, and I hope you enjoy the session.
Yeah, thank you very much, Aline. This is Gregory Ralph from Invest Hong Kong Berlin office, and I'm delighted that we could take part in this innovation workshop to highlight about the biomedical Hong Kong ecosystem, but also Hong Kong as a kind of financial hub in Asia. We are present today with the Berlin office and London office, and I would like to introduce you to Mr. Andrew Davis, head of innovation, Invest Hong Kong London office. Andrew, please go ahead.
Thank you very much indeed, Greg. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Andrew Davis. I'm the head of Invest Hong Kong here in the UK. It's a great pleasure to be involved with Genesis, One Nucleus, as well as some great clients in Invest Hong Kong with AstraZeneca and Novi. Just to set out, Invest Hong Kong provides a free and confidential service to our clients to set up and facilitate them setting up in Hong Kong, whether it's expansion, as in the case of AstraZeneca, or for the first time. So we're there to help, and please reach out to either myself here in London or my colleague Greg in Berlin. We're there to help. So I hope you really enjoy yourself today. So over to you, Greg.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Reza Noba. He's the Director of Innovation of AstraZeneca Hong Kong. Reza, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Greg and Andrew. So very pleased to be with all of you today. So I will try to share with you a flavor of what we are doing here as a science company. So that's why I call my presentation What Science Can Do. So first of all, let me present a bit the market. I will talk a bit about Hong Kong, a bit beyond Hong Kong in the Greater Bay Area, and also China later on. Obviously, when we look at the healthcare system, some of you might be familiar with Hong Kong, some might be less familiar. It's a place where I would say the healthcare system is highly efficient. We also see that in some rankings, we had Bloomberg in that case, Hong Kong was ranked #1 in terms of efficiency of healthcare. You have I would say in terms of life expectancy around 82 to 88, which is also, I would say, a good sign. In terms of academics, we have 3 top local universities, which really are providing a source of great talent. For some of you in the call, that might be something also interesting to consider if you want to expand in the region, because you can find top talent, especially in biotech. So you have the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, of course, the University of Hong Kong, and the Chinese University of Hong Kong. In terms of world-class, again, academics, I think some of the figures on this slide might be familiar to some of you. Professor Tony Mock, we don't present him anymore. He's obviously a figure in cancer. He's received many awards. Professor Juliana Chan was also very well known in the field of research and care in diabetes, and obviously Professor Dennis Loh. So what I wanted to share here with you was like the base of why we are setting up an innovation hub in the region. Let me talk a little bit more. Just move my slide. Yes, to about our operations in China. Some of you again might know AstraZeneca globally. In China, we are in a position which is number 2, number 1, depending on the rankings. We've been investing in the country for a long time, and this is really a commitment in terms of R&D. We will talk a bit about R&D a bit further. We have over 18,000 employees. We might, this number is not including, I think, the Alexion also employees, because this is another big acquisitions we did globally. In terms of sales, we talk about 5 billion, and in terms of innovative medicine, just to give also a perspective, we talk, let's say, about 40 minutes. This will, you will see the importance of that when I share a bit more on how we plan to help the companies to really come in the region and accelerate. So what do we mean by a network of innovation in the group? So we a couple of years ago, we really sensed the need to really leverage our capabilities internally to come with an internal network originally, which was to try to bring together what we sensed as innovation. And innovation can be broadly defined, let's say, from R&D, but it also has, I would say, the digital part more and more, because you have to link to data, digital. We will talk a little bit about that too. And obviously commercial, because we also have to think about how we bring these things to life in the different markets. So you would see on that map that most of the regions were represented. We have some clusters around America, one of them being around Boston. We have obviously the main one you also know in Cambridge, which is historical, and I will talk a little bit about the new things happening there with the opening of DISC and all the things you might already have seen. But focusing on the region, I will talk a little bit more about a couple of names you have on this slide, which is WuXi. You will see that we'll talk about WuXi and iCampus, which are really at the heart of the innovation for us in China. And later on, for the Hong Kong hub, we have some very exciting partnerships, for example, with the Hong Kong Science and Technology Park here. I will share a bit more about that. So China, let's talk a little bit about what we mean by commercial innovation and how we bring what we generally call smart healthcare to co-create with some of the partners in the ecosystem. So first of all, WuXi is where we really created, I would say, life science and innovation campus. This is really the local, I would say, government, which has also been very proactive in promoting healthcare solutions. And as I mentioned earlier, as a company dedicated to China, we have been heavily investing and also trying to bring our medicines to the biggest number of patients in China. So for us, WuXi is, I would say, an interesting starting point if you have, for example, companies which can be interested to join and explore how they can share some innovation with China. On that slide, you would also see on the left side that we have some collaboration with what we call CICC, which is basically the China International Capital Corporation. And this is really, I would say, also typically the type of investment we would call, let's say, around equity type of investment. So later on, if as a company you're interested, you can obviously PM me offline, and I can direct you to the right people in our organization. But as a company, we try to either help companies to join us in the region via co-creating, or if you're interested to do some business development or even some equity, we also have this type of possibilities in China. About the campus I was mentioning, so in WuXi. So this is really, I would say, a fundamental development in the history of our company in China. And you would see it's since 2019, so you might think it's still young, but this is really, I would say, an accelerator already in place for some successful stories. We have accompanied some companies, for example, from Hong Kong to set foot in China, and also to really try to gain scale. The way we do that is, that might sound a bit maybe not easy to grasp at first sight, but we view ourselves as a platform business. What does it mean? It means that if we want to truly be patient-centric, and I'm sure it's a word you can hear from many people, from other competitors, etc. But being truly patient-centric, you have to understand what's happening in the ecosystem. That means, obviously, understanding what's happening from a diagnostic perspective, for example, not only the drug side of it. This is even more, I would say, important in the field of oncology, as you can imagine. Beyond the diagnostic, you can also think about nowadays, as we were saying, all the IoT side, basically trying to have connected device. That's the other D, and basically digital. Nowadays, the cloud or the different clouds, because we live in a world where companies have to think now more and more in terms of multi-cloud, is becoming really important. So I would say this is in a nutshell what we call the 4Ds, the drug, device, diagnostic, and digital. In the IoT world, and just to share very briefly on that, we have again an innovation center in China. And what is the purpose of that? And you will see in some of the examples that we share later on with you that when we talk about, again, integration, and because we try to be truly patient-centric, we try to bring solutions together under the same roof. That doesn't mean that they're all provided by our company, but we try to really see what could be an efficient way, for example, to have a diagnostic of, let's say, lung cancer, and then under the same roof, bring the different type of device and follow-up. So that could be, for example, what we call the integrated lung cancer center. But you can see again in that slide that we don't really limit ourselves to one therapeutic area, and our idea here is to really try to be truly, again, patient-centric, and try to avoid people having to go in many different places. And sometimes when you have very serious disease, it can be a bit painful to go in a diagnostic in one place, get the treatment in another. So again, pre-packaging things under the same roof. So that's one important topic I wanted to share. Earlier on, and we had a few discussions with Gregory, and so I'm very also happy to share with you a bit more about what R&D means for us. Obviously, it's nothing new that pharma is R&D and science at the beginning. Otherwise, we don't have our mission straight. For us, it's 3 big centers, but it's not only those 3 centers. So we have kind of clusters, bioscience clusters. So the main and big obvious one is the one most of you from the UK might already know, which is around Cambridge. And also that center which we created, which is called the DISC. So that's going to be a pioneering, and I believe the amount, if I remember well, what was cited is around £1 billion invested, which is quite massive. And just to give you some magnitude, the whole budget, I think, of the company is around more 7 billion globally. So we have one around Cambridge, then we have Gettysburg, which is also another cluster in the US, and then Gothenburg, of course, in Europe. In the region here, we have facilities in China, because like I was mentioning earlier, we've been investing for a long time in Shanghai. And what we try now to also push and leverage is the possibilities offered in places like Hong Kong. Again, on that slide, what you will see what specifically on that, I would say, small market around 7 point something million inhabitants, what we're doing is we try to really leverage the capabilities that Hong Kong is offering. what can we find in Hong Kong? What can you find in Hong Kong as a support from the government is from basic research. So this, for example, in Hong Kong would be, let's say, the example of the Hong Kong Genome Project. To some more preclinical type of R&D support, for example, a partnership with Science Park in Bio, we have that too. Then to more, I would say, advanced things which are more clinical, and then obviously the latest stage, which is getting closer to BD and commercial. On the clinical side, and that can be of interest for some of you in the audience, you have the possibility, obviously, to benefit from high quality data accredited centers, both from FDA perspective and also an MPA. So that's, I think, quite important to mention. For us, just a few numbers, obviously, the size of the organization is smaller in Hong Kong, but we've been collaborating with the 50 sites and on 14 disease areas. Something closer to my heart, because I've been launching that with my colleague Chris Chow, who might be attending also tonight the call. We launched this program with Hong Kong and Science Park I was mentioning, which is aiming at originally oncology integrated solutions. So we bring again things around these 4Ds I was mentioning together with the idea to leverage what Hong Kong can offer to either help companies protect their IP and also have a foot step into the Greater Bay Area, because Hong Kong is really the door to that vast region of 77 million, I think, people. Hong Kong is 7, so that gives a multiplier of 10 to 11. And then obviously bigger markets in China. So Science Park and the co-incubation program we launched is an opportunity to join, to benefit from some level of funding, and then to obviously get more than funding, the support that a company like AstraZeneca could give to promising projects to accelerate into China. Another type of partnership we signed, which is more on the private side, is with a conglomerate like Lipo, which you also see here, with an Indonesian conglomerate, also operating hospitals, and also developing the Greater Bay Area. And our goal is to try to bring some solutions to the patients, smart solutions to the patients in the Greater Bay Area. As a conclusion, and my message is really very positive. You see all these names on this slide, and frankly, that grows by the day. You're not alone. And as a company, we don't pretend we can do everything. And we know what we cannot do, but we know what we are good at. And what we can really provide is support in that network. So if you're interested really by entering in a broad sense Asia, expanding into China, especially as a starting point in oncology, but again, not limited to oncology, we could talk. We could see if we can help you either in the incubation program or present you to the right partners in our network, because that's how we can make sure that we have entrepreneurs grow. And I'm sure that Joe from Hong Kong Exchange will also share with you a bit later some success stories. Thank you. So without further ado, maybe I hand over to Gregory.
Yeah, thank you so much, Reza. This was wonderful. Thank you so much for your outline about AstraZeneca in Hong Kong and about your global value chain. Excellent. Now I would like to introduce to Mr. Joe Fan. He's the Vice President, Deputy Head of International Insurance Services from Hong Kong Exchange. Joe, please take the floor.
Okay, thank you, Gregory, and thank you, Reza. Yes, maybe let me share the screen first. Okay. Sorry, Gregory, could you pass me the host for the sharing, please?
Yeah, just on it.
Yes, I got it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Good morning, and for everyone. My name is Joe. I'm from Hong Kong Stock Exchange. and I'm working on the international IPO pipeline business, and also especially into the biotech, and also working on the regulatory side in terms of the ESG and sustainability as well. So I'm glad tonight on behalf of Hong Kong Stock Exchange to share more about what's going on in the Hong Kong biotech and healthcare landscape, and also especially in the perspective of the capital market. So while I think while the world now has been focusing on the post-COVID or in the adaptation, I think the global investors' interest in the biotech companies has dramatically increased. So right now, over $57 billion US has been invested worldwide in the biotech companies since last year. So I recap a report from McKinsey early this year. Actually, it mentioned about the venture capital activities in biotech firms actually increased more than 45% from last year. And with the overall global investment is more than $37 billion US, especially in the biotech and healthcare industry. So I think with this very strong momentum, that's why it drives the success of the Hong Kong capital market in the biotech sector. Since we launched our new listing rules in the Biotech chapter since April 2018. So right now, Hong Kong has been the Asia's largest biotech fundraising hub, and also the second largest globally. Okay, so from the macro point of view, I can give a very snapshot introduce about the Hong Kong Exchange. Consistently, actually, Hong Kong, we are one of the world's top 3 IPO venued in the past 7 years out of the 12 years. So so far right now we have more than 2,500 listed companies with the total market cap of more than $5.4 trillion US. So up to now, in this 11 months this year, actually we have welcomed more than 83 new IPOs in Hong Kong, in which about 17 are from the biotech sectors, recorded pre-revenue biotech companies, and raised more than $38 billion US so far. And I think with no doubt, the healthcare and biotech sector has become one of the most prominent sectors in Hong Kong, especially in the IPO market. So I think just add on a point, as recently mentioned, from the AstraZeneca's point of view, and about the partnership with Hong Kong Science Park. Actually, Hong Kong Exchange also we share the same mission, and also are very keen to support the biotech startups and the ecosystem in September this year, actually the Hong Kong Exchange and the Hong Kong Science Park also signed an MOU to facilitate the development and incubation of the Hong Kong biotech and also the ecosystem. And we will advise the companies also from the capital market and from listing perspective, and help them to grow up from the startup stage. Okay, another highlight, as I mentioned, actually in the past 10 years, Hong Kong Exchange has been went through lots of market revolution and also the breakthroughs, especially in the innovation side. So of course, in the past, maybe 10 years ago, you can see some traditional sectors like just like the consumer brands and also property development and also financial services are the core sectors in Hong Kong. But since 2018, as I mentioned, we have a very key breakthrough in our listing rules, and we welcome 3 main new sectors, namely the biotech, the dual class share structure, and also secondary listing. And I will go through more detail into the stage. And after we launched the new chapters in 2018 to welcome the biotech companies, actually in a single year, when we first launched 2018, we only had 5 biotech companies listed in Hong Kong, including the Beijing, Atletis Pharma, Innovent Biologics, etc. But right now, in single years, since 3 years after, and right now, and in 2021 this year, we already have 17 in a single year, we have 17 biotech listing, and so far accumulatively, we have about 45 biotech listing in Hong Kong already. So another, apart from the biotech listing, I'd just like to highlight one new update in terms of our regulation side, because I think SPAC is one very hot topics, especially in the US market, and also is also another trend in Europe. So in September, we launched a proposal on the new SPAC listing regime. And secondly, is about listing regime for overseas issuers. It's more like some relaxation for overseas companies to simplify their legal compliance regulations, as well as welcome more secondary listings from Greater China, as well as some international companies to land Hong Kong. So as I mentioned about the three main breakthroughs back to 2018, I think I'll focus on the biotech chapter. Actually, at that time, actually, we mainly break through our regulations to welcome those we call it pre-revenue biotech companies. It means that those companies which are well eligible to with the core products or fulfill our listing conditions, so that even though they are loss-making or didn't have any financial track records, after our assessment, we also welcome them to list in Hong Kong to access to the public market. And I think this is very efficient listing route, especially for the biotech companies. They can raise funds at the early stage to facilitate their clinical cycle and also the R&D and also the product development, rather than keep raising more and more private round in the private market. I think it's very important for the biotech companies which require more capital to support their product development. And second is about the dual class structure and also the secondary listing. So I won't go into detail about these two parts today. And another, I think the key momentum, as I mentioned, is about the new economy. So it's a very hot topics and also the big concept, especially nowadays during the post-COVID century, because technology has been part of our daily life and in all different kind of industry or business perspective. So after we launched the new rules since 2018, actually, I think the new economy has been building our Hong Kong market, the DNA, and fundamentally changed the whole market momentum. So up to November this year, actually, we have welcomed already 174 new economy companies, which include AI, healthcare, biotech, and also like data and fintech, those related companies, and raised more than 100. More than 63% of the total IPO fundraise during the period in Hong Kong. And also, they also represent more than 26% of the total market capitalization in our capital market from an equity perspective. In terms of ADT, the average day turnover, they are also the major contributor, because just back to 2018, this new economy companies only contribute by about 4% ADT, but right now it has increased up to about 22% the daily turnover. So especially for the healthcare and biotech, I can supplement more about the number. Right now, about 82 healthcare and also we call it the pre-revenue biotech listing. And for the biotech sector, it already raised more than $31 billion US. In terms of the product category, we can see more and more diversified product has been listed in Hong Kong, apart from the traditional pharmaceutical, drugs, diagnostics, and also the medical device has become another hot trend in Hong Kong. About the post-listing momentum in the secondary listing, in the secondary market, healthcare, I think, has now been one of the most fastest growing sectors in Hong Kong as well as in Asia. So in terms of the trading volume, the sector velocity, and also, as I mentioned, about the ADT, you can see that actually there has been an increasing trend, and I think investors has been getting more and more familiar with the different business model, and also the product appetite in terms of biotech has been more and more mature right now. In 2019, we also, the Hang Seng company from the index company in Hong Kong, we also launched the Hang Seng Hong Kong listed biotech index, which include about 55 constituent stocks, in which about 22 are those pre-revenue Hong Kong listed biotech companies. So since the launch of the index, actually this index has generated an annualized returns about 40%, which has outperformed the other sectors index in Hong Kong as well. As I mentioned, looking ahead, based on our observations in our Hong Kong listed healthcare sectors, we can see some trends in terms of the product of the biotech companies. So first of all, I think digital healthcare and medtech is becoming more and more prominent and most popular in Hong Kong. Because as I mentioned, because in the combination with the post-COVID and also the booming technology sector, so you can see that I think the digitalization and also the internet economy right now has facilitated biotech companies to transform from a traditional form into a more online or digital format to run their business. And another very popular trend in Hong Kong is on the medical device sector, because and some number again this year we have about 17 biotech listing, in which 9 of them represent more than 50% of medical devices company. So I think it will continue to be one of the most prominent trend forward, but we will foresee a more diversified products you will see will be land in Hong Kong market. Apart from the product side, I will supplement from the geographical point of view. In the traditional, of course, Chinese company, the Chinese biotech companies is one of the organic source of the biotech pipeline in Hong Kong. But we have seen, and also we have received lots and lots of inquiry and potential applications. It's more from the from other international regions, namely UK is one of the top destination, top supply of those biotech companies, as well as Europe and other European regions, and also from the Southeast Asia, including the Singapore, and also like Ireland, and also Israel is another very a prominent destination of the biotech companies and healthcare sector. So another sharing is about the top traction, especially for the international biotech company. Why do you need to consider Hong Kong as compared with like US or other market when they consider going public? I think one of the very unique and the very attractive point is about the connectivity in the perspective from the global point of view. Because I think geographically, Hong Kong as the gateway, as the bridge between the international market as well as the China market. So I think it's a very important, because in terms of the biotech and healthcare, I think the Chinese patient and the market is so huge that I think a majority of our biotech sectors will be keen to do the clinical trial or do the more product developments or R&D in the China sector, in the China regions. So I think the Hong Kong market is definitely one of the attraction to help the international company to get access into the China market. And the second is about the investor. I think it's very important that Hong Kong, we are truly an international platform. We have a very diversified and international pool of investors. about more than 50% of our trading is coming from the international investors, both from the retail, institutional, as well as some from local and also international investors. Geographically, I think US, UK, as well as mainland China are the three top source of the investors. And from other regions like Singapore and Japan are following. They are playing very active in Hong Kong as well. So for those like hedge fund and some institutional investors, they are playing very hard, very active in our Hong Kong IPO markets to support our the Hong Kong listed biotech companies as well. So as I mentioned in the beginning, two breakthroughs this year. We launched the consultation paper. First of all, is on the overseas listing, which have been concluded and will be in effect starting from next year, 2022. Actually, it's more in the shareholder protection for all issues, including the international companies. So another key breakthrough I think is more important is about on the SPAC regime. Actually, I think, for example, like UK, the FCA also have been reviewing their existing listing regime and also try to enhance, I think, the SPAC regime as well. So I think is for Hong Kong, we were trying to provide another alternative option as compared with the traditional IPO. So I think our SPAC regime, we try to take a straight balance between the market quality, some facility and flexibility for the potential companies and also the target. Okay. So I think in the interest of time, I will go through details about technicality, but we welcome your questions, or you can feel free to PM me if you have any inquiries or interest about biotech in Hong Kong. So thank you very much, and back to you, Greg.
Thank you so much, Joe. This was wonderful outline. So we have famous 23 minutes left, and I would like to invite the company Novi from London. The title is Dark Biomarker Development by Novi, with the CEO, Mr. Aman Khan, and the CSO, Francesca Cordero. When they're here, please take the floor, Aman.
Great. Thank you, Greg.
You should be able to share your slide, Aman.
Sure, thank you. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Excellent. So thank you very much for inviting me to present Novi today, and it's a pleasure to be here. Novi is a company which has our immediate goals is to establish our technology as a market-leading biomarker in glaucoma and AMD. Using our proprietary technology, which consists of a biologic combined with artificial intelligence, pharmaceutical companies are able to de-risk and accelerate their clinical development programs, saving them time and money. This is the first biomarker in the ophthalmology space, which can provide this data sets to pharmaceutical companies, which provides huge cost savings and de-risks their pipeline going forwards. We further plan to develop our technology into a diagnostic. And the key to this diagnostic is that whilst there's lots of other diagnostic technologies for AMD glaucoma currently in existence, we will be able to diagnose those patients up to 10 years ahead of the standard of care. So if you can diagnose patients early, you can then preserve more vision. DARC has completed phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trials with recent publications in Progress in Retinal Eye, which is the highest rated ophthalmology medical journal. We've now completed 6 transactions with the pharmaceutical companies and have recently shipped to countries such as Korea, Japan, and Australia and New Zealand. And this is the only technology in the world capable of identifying individual cell stress and apoptosis in humans. So apoptosis is when a cell is sick, dying, or stressed, and our technology has an affinity to this. So in terms of how it works, the protein itself is a modified annexin-5. Annexin-5 is a protein that's found in every human being, so it's very safe. What Francesca has done, she's combined that with a fluorescent dye that's currently then injected in the arm of a patient. It takes around 2 hours. And then in the cell in your retina, where you have cells which are sick, dying, or stressed, there's an inside layer that externalizes. Our molecule comes and attaches itself to it. And then you can see from the blue circle dots that these items highlight the sick cells. And basically using this technology and the AI can then count these number of sick cells. So if you're treating a drug, then you take a baseline image on day 1 and count the number of sick cells in the patient. You then wait 3 months and give them another dose of dark. And obviously in that intermediary period, you would have provided them with your therapeutic test. You then measure the patient again after 3 months, or you can do it after a month. It just depends on how quickly your drug works. Yeah, and you'll then be able to get a very, very detailed measure at the cellular level of how the patient's health has improved in that period. And so, for example, you can then build up a data set very quickly in 6 months to show that your drug is actually working. Or in some cases, in 90% of drug trials fail, you will be able to then cancel your clinical program, potentially reformulate your module, or then focus your money on another asset. So in terms of the sort of key USPs for this product is that we can identify patients with more active disease. Now, this is really, really important, whereas if you're doing an ophthalmology trial, if you have to find 100 patients with glaucoma, it's very difficult to do because you can't find 100 patients which are the same level of disease progression until this technology existed. We can therefore test and find the patients which are progressing at the same rate. So when you create your patient cohort group, we split that into 2 groups. Your placebo group is virtually the same in terms of disease progression as your test group. So therefore you have a greater statistical chance of actually showing that your drug works quicker and earlier. So it's a very useful benefit in that respect. And the main item in terms of the USP is that we can actually test these drugs rapidly. It very much depends on the Cmax potential of the therapeutic being tested, but you no longer need to wait 18 months, 2 years to get a readout. We should be able to give you a decent data set within 90 days of the drug being used. And you can take more dark interventions. It's very safe and increase your data set. So we've had some success with big pharma in terms of projects, but we've also had some very positive responses from early stage small startups, which often need to get more data early to be able to help with their funding rounds. So we're hopeful that we can serve both aspects of the big pharma and then the emerging ophthalmology startups in the future. In terms of our clinical data to date, so our phase 2, which was published last year, this shows in terms of how we've trained our algorithm. It's very important to mention how we've trained this. So we've trained our algorithm on our control group and then applied it to the suspects group, so we can't be accused of overtraining. A lot of companies back into the numbers, but we've been very straightforward on this. In terms of the biomarker data, so that's the strange looking graph down below. This shows that any patient which has more than 30 dark counts in their eyes progresses in glaucoma. We don't know why it's 30, but that's the cutoff. And for a biomarker, it's very unusual to have the straight cutoff, but it means that we can then provide some very precise data to these pharmaceutical companies. We have published some data in AMD, but this is only 5 patients, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we're very hopeful that in the next 12 months, we'll be able to release more data on AMD. AMD has around 180 million people around the world who suffer from this disease, and it has significant expenditure currently in that space. In terms of how we deliver the technology, so with COVID, unfortunately, looking like it's coming back again, we've built a cloud-based system to be able to analyze these retinal images. So what happens is the images are loaded onto this cloud portal. AI analysis is basically run, and then we can provide reports back to clients virtually instantly in terms of the data that was being analyzed. And this enables us to form an objective independent assessment. We don't know if it's a placebo patient or a test patient, but we can run the analysis, and that gives the pharma companies comfort that they're getting accurate and impartial data back from us. In terms of our business process, how do we work? Well, We ship our product to a CRO. So the CRO is the company which would actually perform the clinical trial. We would obviously train the CRO to make sure they're able to take the images and the injection. We do actually have a nasal solution of DARK, which is in development. So at the moment it is an IV in the arm, but hopefully have the nasal in sort of 12 months time, which will make it easier for patients, and then particularly as we plan to move to a diagnostic in the future, the nasal will be the route to market for that. In terms of how we sell, so we have a sort of per vial charge on the technology. So the initial phase 1 and phase 2 trials will be relatively small commercial returns. As we get to a larger phase 3, where you have 1,000 patients having 5 injections, and then those sums can get to sort of 10 to 15 million pounds in terms of transaction value. But because of the value that we can provide the pharmaceutical company, we believe that should be successful. And this year, we've just signed over sort of $2 million worth of contracts, which, given the difficult trading scenario by COVID and the fact we haven't been able to go to any events and meet new customers, but we're quite pleased with that performance. In terms of our kind of next funding rounds, we are kind of looking for around sort of 5 million to be able to further develop the diagnostics. We want to collect some more data in glaucoma. That'll be a sort of 18 months trial, sort of 300 patients, and that should hopefully be able to then get us to a situation 18 months where we've got the biomarker business, which will have strong commercial revenues, and then we'll layer on a very large opportunity for the diagnostic. If the technology does what we hope it will do, and this graph shows it very well, where at the moment you tend to go in to see your ophthalmologist or your doctor when you've lost 30 to 40% of your vision. You can't get that back ever. There's obviously a lot of gene therapy companies working on that, but right now, once you've lost vision, you can't restore it. However, the key thing about DARK is that we can identify this technology, this sickness very early, which was previously undetectable. So if you can treat patients earlier, by the time they then reach their sort of 60, 70 years old, they would have preserved more RGU cells, which means they can still see. So vision is one of the most crucial things in life. It's one of the top 3 things that everyone worries about losing. So by being able to identify patients early, you can treat them early. And we do hope that in the future, we'll be able to convert this technology onto the mobile, so it can then be distributed into countries where there isn't much of a health system, particularly in ophthalmology. Often the analysis for these machines is very costly. So we hope that we'll be able to provide some sort of third world support in the future when we roll out this technology further. Just to sort of highlight the market opportunity, which is very large, and particularly in Asia, in China and Japan, there's a lot of patients which have retinal issues such as AMD and glaucoma. It's rising at around sort of 23% in those population groups. So we do see this as a huge market potential. We obviously have to get the data to prove that we've got the right sensitivity and specificity, but our early data is highly encouraging, and we look forward to raising the next funding round and getting the technology out. We're very hopeful that we can continue the very positive discussions that we've had with the Hong Kong development group. Prior to COVID, we were very keen on setting up subsidiary there. We've had some setbacks in terms of our ability to travel, and also we had to focus on preserving the existing business rather than expanding, just because the world's got a little bit trickier in terms of trading conditions in the last sort of 12 months. But we're very hopeful that we can continue the discussions that we're having with the Hong Kong team and eventually set foot in Hong Kong, as we see that as a strong base to be able to then access mainland China with our technology. So just to summarize our technology in total, we have a biomarker, which we have right now, and we further to plan to develop that by collecting more data and eventually go for regulatory approval. In the future, we plan to fund a diagnostic. That will take us 18 months to 3 years from where we are to get the data sets for that. And then we also have in development a targeted drug therapy platform. So using our same molecule, we've added an extra binding site. The plan is to attach the therapeutic and then being able to provide a targeted therapy to patients. That particular therapy plan molecule has recently received a £1.2 million UK non-dilutive grant to help accelerate that progress, which is great. Then in terms of our future pipeline, so there's a chance that the technology should work in CNS, and by chance I mean by the fact that when you're born, your eye forms part of your brain. So any retinal, any brain diseases, you should be able to visualize in your eye. There's a number of other recent scientific papers in the last 24 months which highlight this potential, and therefore it would be fantastic if we can then potentially apply this to MS, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. We do have some MS data that we're looking through at the moment, but we do wish to hopefully in the future collect Alzheimer's and Parkinson's using the same technology to be able to see if we can work as a diagnostic. And it'd be great to be able to go into a high street store, take a nasal version of DARC, and it can basically do a very accurate assessment of these 5 disease areas. In the last 12 months, we've been very fortunate to have made some progress. We finished second in the Shenzhen Innovation Competition. That was back end of last year, and that was out of 1,500 worldwide companies. We were recently nominated for Best Biotech Startup in the UK. We finished in the top 3, and earlier this year we also won Best Newcomer for Clinical Trials. So we're very fortunate for the progress that the team has made. And thank you all for listening to the presentation. If you would like to find out any more information or have any of the scientific journals sent to you for backup, or have one of our team reach out, do feel free to contact me, and look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you very much, Aman. This was wonderful. This was so great. So I would like to ask Aline first. Do we have questions from the audience, or I make some questions to the speakers?
You don't have any, I can see, but if you have any, go on.
Yes, I prepared 3 for each of the speaker, 1, but I will change my direction now. Okay, the first question to Reza AstraZeneca is like, we're talking about IoT, the 4Ds. What do you think about medical AI? Then the question to Joe, when we talk about Spark, we saw the company Prenetics went Spark in Hong Kong for 1.7 billion. How can this be? This is an enormous amount of money. And the last question to Aman is about Novi, how you see the Hong Kong and the Asian markets in the future, not only proliferating your biomarker for the eye diseases, but also going for CNS, knowing the aging society. So this was my 3 questions, but my direction I changed now. When we have these very prominent speakers today, how can you work together? How can we invite Novi to Hong Kong? Please go ahead.
I think obviously it's very interesting to see all this promising science, and again, it's all about what makes the difference. So I'm very happy that Aman could share that with us. Beyond again oncology, because the program I mentioned in Incubate was oncology, but that's also the reason why I talked about R&D, all these innovation hubs we have within the company. So Aman, of course, I'm very happy to put you in touch with the right people. I'm sure that later on, if obviously you're interested by the next stage, etc., Joe might comment, and he might be the right person to help. I mean, let him to comment that. But just to bounce on one of your comments, Gregory, because you talk about obviously one company precisely. I think what is interesting is, and what I liked in the presentation from Joe, is really to see the speed of, I would say, change, or the number of listings have been really growing. It really shows that there is it's not like it's a sustainable trend for Hong Kong. And that's really my message here, and for the audience. Or of course, we all work hand in hand. I mean, Joe mentioned they already have an MOU with Science Park. We have an MOU with Science Park. But an MOU is just to say to the world outside that you collaborate. But on a daily basis, we do. Today, I was in another conference in the afternoon where there's a selection of startups. Even if it's not from us directly, of course, if we can help those startups to connect with other people, we would do, because that's how an ecosystem works. And if you have the right level of innovation by an entrepreneur, our mission as individuals is to bring that, obviously in healthcare, is to benefit to the patients. And obviously, overall, is to really make sure that depending on the stage of growth, that the company gets the right level of support. As AstraZeneca is very clear, we're not VCs. I mean, we're just there to really make sure we can help to really either complement the solution. If we have some support we can give in China because of our strength, we're talking about 80,000 people, we would definitely do it as well.
Thank you. Aman, you have a comment? You want to go IPO in Hong Kong?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely talked about it, Greg. It's just someone stuck COVID-19 in the way. So absolutely. I mean, we personally see, and I personally see the Asian market as significant in terms of the ocular opportunities for this technology. Certainly very interested in finding potential corporate partners who can potentially work on the CNS space. As a very small company, I need to be careful that we don't try and do too many things and don't get anything done. So, you know, we're looking at potential partners to potentially look at, and our preclinical data on the CNS is interesting. We can obviously share that if there's any interest afterwards. And because we've got the physical product already manufactured in quite large quantities and we have the platform, then it's, you know, hopefully a sort of partnership would be with the other company kind of performing the clinical trial, proving the data out, and then we can kind of focus on our ophthalmology business angle. But yeah, I can see that you know, I think there's 23 million patients in China with glaucoma, and actually AMD is now 24 million. So that's you know, that's growing at a rapid rate. So there's a huge need for the ophthalmology technology, but you know, right now in the world, there's no real effective diagnosis for CNS. And something which can be potentially, again, it's very early stage, but we do believe that the different patterns which form on the eyes will indicate different diseases. We can already see right now that in glaucoma, you get a wing shape on the back of your macula. AMD is a central disposition. The initial MS data is like a swirly pattern. So as we build up our understanding of how these diseases progress, we're hopeful that we'll be able to use the same technology to be able to diagnose different diseases. And I think one of the big things for Alzheimer's, which is probably going to be the most difficult one to analyze because it's probably one of the most complicated diseases, is that if we can diagnose those patients, maybe there's a chance that some other assets which are already in existence could actually treat those conditions. Often conditions are being treated very, very late in those CNS areas. And I don't know, it's just a bit of speculation, but I think half the solution is to find a proper diagnosis for those CNS areas.
Thank you so much. Joe, what do you think about working together with the One Nucleus group, with the Cambridge cluster? Do you want to write a MOU?
Sure, sure. Thank you, Greg. We love to. Actually, I think not the form of MOU or whatever framework agreement, but we are happy to co-work with all stakeholders in the industry. So first of all, I thanks Greg, and I would like to write on reasons. I think that you bring a very good sharing, because I think that we can share some observations in terms of the biotech companies, especially from what we have seen during our interaction with the founders or from the investors in the industry. Because I think although right now is during the COVID, we are in the separation by countries or in terms of some business, but oppositely, we can see that from the biotech sector, we can see more and more collaboration and cross-border cooperation, and more co-sharing I can see, because especially when we deal with many, especially some like Chinese biotech companies or those from Europe or Southeast Asia. They all of them have cross-border R&D, and also they are keen to look for international, especially from the Asian investor. So we are very impressed that AstraZeneca, like Teresa said, you are very dedicated to incubate the startups, and just like what we did from Hong Kong Stock Exchange, that's why we work closely with the Hong Kong Science Park to help the startups to grow, not just from the capital market side, but we also advise them and help them to align with the standards or like the governance, to work closely with the investors. So I think we are working very well so far to grow the whole ecosystem, not just from the Hong Kong or Asia, but I think internationally. So I can see it's a very healthy ecosystem, and we are very optimistic about the Hong Kong. Not just purely from the fundraising side, but I think from the whole ecosystem, and also from the R&D or product development side, we are very optimistic from this perspective. Yeah.
Thanks so much. So the time is running out. Unfortunately, we could talk more. It's so wonderful. So I give the floor now to Aline. Do you have some comments, final remarks to us from Hong Kong and from London?
From London to Hong Kong. Just one on me, because you mentioned one nucleus and having an MOU with London, Hong Kong Stock Exchange. Of course, we're welcoming that. No, I think that was the purpose of this workshop, and that was very well articulated. Yes, we are welcoming collaboration because it is in this vein of the complete offer. So I think companies we work with, they're not just looking for cash and another opportunity for public listing. They're not only working for scientific collaborations, because as you mentioned, they have that at their doorstep, or they're not looking just for a market, they're looking for the three of them. So if they want to, go to Hong Kong, that's to have access to the market, the financial support, and the scientific excellence and capabilities. And I think you were very well presented that. So yeah, and that was the whole purpose of doing that, is because there is a genuine interest in developing in this region of Asia. So I hope we can do more of that, do more education piece, because that's all what it's about. And I thank you all very much for having showed us that today. I thought that was really insightful. So I'm delighted that I can share that more with our members, and maybe in the future we'll manage to have a better face-to-face function to that, but to be continued. But thanks very much. That was really good.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Bye now.